The flight where everything changed. Every flight carries passengers. Some are eager, some exhausted, some just trying to get from point A to B. But every now and then, a flight carries something else, a moment that changes the trajectory of a life. This story begins like any other. A quiet man boards a plane, unnoticed and unimpressive to the eye. A stewardess, hardened by years of demanding service and difficult customers, sizes him up without a second thought. What unfolds in the sky above them isn't just turbulence in the air, but a collision of pride, humility, and hidden power. This is the story of a mistake that revealed a truth, of a simple spill that uncovered greatness in disguise. And as we land where we began, with a man in seat 3A and a stewardess pouring coffee, everything that seemed ordinary becomes extraordinary. A stranger among the clouds, the terminal was chaos incarnate, buzzing with families rushing to catch connections, corporate warriors glued to their phones, and tourists dragging oversized bags with wide-eyed confusion. But amidst this usual airport frenzy stood one man who moved differently. No entourage, no fanfare, just a solitary figure in a plain gray hoodie, dark jeans, and scuffed white sneakers. A cap shadowed his face, and mirrored aviators shielded his eyes from curious stares. He looked like the kind of man who wanted to go unnoticed, but if you looked closer, really looked, you might sense something else. Stillness, precision, as if he wasn't hiding, just watching. Callum Reeve, though his name wasn't on any visible document, stood quietly near Gate 17 for Flight 928 to New York. He carried no luggage except a slim leather journal held firmly under his arm, its edges worn, like it had traveled far more than he had today. He let everyone board ahead of him, families, executives, influencers, the elderly. When he finally stepped through the jet bridge, the crew offered a practiced smile and barely glanced at his boarding pass. "Welcome aboard, sir," the steward said. He gave a nod, brief and almost imperceptible, before finding his seat. 3A first-class window seat. As he settled in, he said nothing, no requests, no fuss. He placed the journal in the seatback pocket, pulled his cap down slightly, and stared out at the tarmac like it was whispering a secret only he could hear. What no one knew, not the flight crew, not the passengers, not even the pilot, was that the man in 3A owned the very aircraft they were flying in. But today, he wasn't here as an owner or a mogul or a billionaire investor. Today, Callum Reeve was flying as a ghost. Misjudged in the sky, Clara Jenkins had been a stewardess for nearly 6 years. Her uniform was always perfectly pressed, her hair secured in a neat bun, and her voice tuned to a customer service melody that could soothe crying babies and annoyed executives alike. But years of thankless shifts, red-eye flights, and first-class entitlement had given her a jaded edge. She had learned to profile passengers instinctively. The loud talkers were usually business-class show-offs, the silent ones either hungover or full of attitude. And the hoodie wearing types, especially in first class, often fell into the category she privately called spoiled rich kids slumming it for attention. So when she approached 3A during the drink service, clipboard in hand, and saw the man staring blankly out the window with no acknowledgement of her presence, her assumptions clicked into place. "Sir, would you care for a beverage?" she asked politely, her smile thin. No response, not even a blink. Clara tapped her pen against her tray, resisting the urge to sigh. "Excuse me, sir, coffee, tea, water." Still, the man in 3A didn't move. He didn't even flinch. Her patience thinned. Rude, she thought. The least he could do was shake his head. She moved on, muttering under her breath, "Too important to speak now, huh?" She didn't know who he was. She didn't know his silence wasn't arrogance, but calculation, a test in its own way. She saw a ghost in sweatshirts, but what sat before her was a multimillionaire visionary who had built aviation routes, not just flown them. And yet, in that moment, Clara only saw a man too aloof to respect her job. The irony, she was about to serve him coffee that would stain far more than his clothes. It would reveal the hidden truths flying 30,000 feet above the world. A spill at 30,000 feet. The plane had climbed smoothly to cruising altitude, sailing through calm skies. Clara moved down the aisle with the ease of routine, balancing trays and pouring drinks with one hand like a seasoned magician. The coffee pot steamed gently in her grasp as she made her way back to the first-class section. Clara paused near 3A again, taking a breath. Just offer him coffee one more time. Stay polite. Be professional. She leaned in with a carefully measured smile. Sir, would you like coffee? No response. Again, frustration prickled her nerves. She looked around. No one else seemed to notice. Everyone else was buried in screens or sipping champagne. Clara gritted her teeth and muttered, just loud enough to hear herself, maybe next time speak up like a normal human being. And then it happened fast and uncontrollable, a sudden jolt. The aircraft shuddered from unexpected turbulence. Clara's balance faltered. The coffee pot lurched violently forward. A sharp splash. The searing hot liquid spilled across the man's face, staining his hoodie, streaking his cheek, and soaking into his collarbone. Gasps echoed from nearby passengers. Time seemed to freeze. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir, she stammered, dropping to her knees beside him, grabbing napkins, water bottles, anything she could find. The man reached up slowly and removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that were eerily calm. Not angry, not pained, just observant. His voice was measured, quiet, almost chilling in contrast to the panic around him. It's all right. Mistakes happen. He dabbed his cheek with his sleeve, not breaking eye contact. Clara was stunned. No yelling, no outrage, just icy calm, but something in his tone wasn't forgiveness, it was control, like a man holding back a power no one understood. She backed away slowly, heart thudding. And yet, in the back of her mind, a deeper question emerged. Who was this man? Really, the silent storm after the incident, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, deeply wrong. The man in 3A hadn't complained. He hadn't asked for a supervisor. He hadn't demanded compensation. He just cleaned himself up, leaned back in his seat, and continued staring out the window like nothing had happened. But that calm, it wasn't peace. It was the silence before a storm. Clara tried to go about her duties, checking seat belts, delivering meals, but her mind kept circling back to him. Every time she passed by, she felt his presence like static electricity. He didn't look at her again. He didn't need to. By the time the flight descended into JFK, Clara's nerves were frayed. As passengers began to disembark, she took her usual position by the exit, thanking each guest with robotic cheer. And then came 3A. The man stood in the aisle for a moment, straightened his hoodie, and stepped forward slowly. When he reached her, he paused just long enough to make her skin crawl. He leaned slightly closer, his voice low and steady. We all make mistakes, he said, eyes locked on hers, but some mistakes cost more than we realize. And then, with a faint smile that held no humor, he walked off the plane and disappeared into the sea of passengers. Clara stood frozen. She had dealt with difficult customers, been cursed at, threatened, insulted. But this man hadn't raised his voice once, and yet she had never been more shaken. She didn't know that in just 2 days his words would echo back in ways she never imagined. Because Callum Reeve wasn't just a mystery passenger, he was the owner of the airline, and he had just become the architect of her future. Whether that future was a second chance or a reckoning was yet to be decided. The message behind the smile: 2 days had passed since the flight, yet Clara couldn't let it go. She replayed the moment over and over, the splash, the burn, the eerie calm in his eyes, and especially his final words. Some mistakes cost more than we realize. She had tried to laugh it off with her fellow crew members. He was probably just some tech guy used to being worshipped. But even as she cracked the joke, her fingers trembled while pouring drinks on the next flight. The silence of that man haunted her. His voice was not threatening, not loud, but powerful, too powerful for a normal passenger. Late one night, curiosity overwhelmed her. She opened the airline's internal app and checked the passenger manifest for flight 928. Row 3A listed under an alias. The ID was valid but vague. No frequent flyer status, no prior flights, no linked profile. It was like the seat had been booked by a ghost. That's when she began to panic. Was he someone important? Government, military, a secret buyer? Her questions were about to be answered, and not in the way she expected. The room where it happens, Clara was halfway through prepping for another flight when her manager's voice called from behind the galley curtain. Jenkins, HQ needs you at the 10 a.m. meeting tomorrow, mandatory. She blinked. Headquarters, me. The manager didn't elaborate, just shrugged and walked away. The next morning, Clara stood at the towering glass entrance of the airline's corporate building, stomach fluttering with uncertainty. She thought about wearing her uniform, but opted for a simple black blouse and jeans. Professional, but not desperate. She entered the sleek conference room where a few dozen crew members and middle managers had gathered. Whispers filled the space. No one knew what this was about. Then the CEO walked in. The air shifted. He straightened his tie and cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming on short notice. We have an important transition to announce. Our airline has a new majority shareholder. Heads turned. A new shareholder. In fact, the CEO continued, he's been evaluating our airline in secret for several weeks now. His vision aligns with innovation, accountability, and leadership transformation. The door behind the CEO opened, and there he was, Callum Reeve, no hoodie this time, no sunglasses, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that fit like it was sewn into him. Hair combed back, jaw clean, shaven, posture commanding. Clara's heart stopped. Her throat dried, gasps rippled across the room, murmurs swelled as Callum stepped forward to the podium and scanned the crowd. His eyes landed on Clara for a split second, just long enough. She froze. He began to speak. When I invest in something, he said, voice smooth and deep, I don't just invest in metal and fuel. I invest in people, people who either elevate the brand or stain it. He paused. The flight I took 2 days ago was more than a journey. It was a test of service, of human instinct, of humility. Clara's legs felt weak. Callum continued, I'm not here to punish anyone, but I believe that leadership should be earned, not demanded, and some of you. He looked around, his eyes pausing again. Need to ask yourselves, if you didn't know who I was, did you still treat me with respect? The silence that followed was deafening. Clara knew right then the coffee incident wasn't over. It was just beginning. The reveal beneath the wings, the conference room, emptied slowly after Callum's speech, but Clara remained frozen in her seat, her heart pounding like turbulence hitting full force. People whispered as they left, eyes occasionally flicking toward her. Some of the crew had begun to piece it together. She had poured coffee on the new owner of the airline, but there was no official mention of her name. No direct reference, no call-out, until her supervisor, pale and visibly sweating, approached her with a whisper, Mr. Reeve would like to see you alone. Clara nodded numbly and followed a junior assistant down a hallway of glass offices until they reached a private boardroom with frosted windows and black leather chairs. Inside, Callum stood by the floor, a ceiling window, staring at one of his jets on the runway. He didn't turn when she entered. Sit, he said simply. She obeyed. Long silence. I never reveal myself on test flights. He finally said, I sit quietly, I observe, because when no one knows who you are, that's when their true nature comes out. Clara's palms were sweating. Sir, I truly didn't mean to. I know you didn't. He interrupted, finally turning to face her, but you didn't try either, not really. His eyes were calm but piercing. She felt like he was seeing through her uniform, her smile, even her soul. Do you know why I didn't lash out at you on that flight? He asked. Clara shook her head. Because how I react to people like you tells me more than any corporate report ever will. That cut deep. But here's what surprised me, he continued. You were shaken, not defensive. You didn't blame turbulence or brush it off. You carried the weight of it. That shows me something. Clara looked up. What? That you still have something most people lose in this industry, he said. Conscience. The unexpected offer. Clara expected a reprimand, a demotion, at worst, termination. Instead, Callum reached into a black folder on the table and slid a sealed envelope across to her. She stared at it. What is this? He gestured for her to open it. Inside was a letter with an elegant watermark. The words nearly made her jaw drop. Promotion offer. Interim Director in Flight Experience Division. Her eyes widened. Is this real? He nodded. I need someone who understands both sides of the aisle, the crew and the customer. Someone who's made a mistake. Someone who knows what it feels like to fall short and wants to rise. Clara was stunned. But why me after what happened? Because you remind me of me, Callum said softly. Years ago when I worked baggage at this same airline, I spilled paint on a senator's luggage, got chewed out in front of 3 managers. I could have walked away. He stepped closer, his voice low but powerful. But I stayed, learned, and one day I bought the airline that made me feel invisible. Clara felt tears sting her eyes, not from shame, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time: belief. I'm giving you a choice, Callum said. Take this role, build something better, or walk away and stay the same. She took the envelope with trembling hands. For the first time in days, she smiled, not out of duty, but something deeper: hope. Rising from the spill, weeks passed, then months. Clara's world had changed. No longer the woman nervously navigating narrow aisles with plastic trays, she now walked the airline's headquarters halls with a quiet authority. Her uniform was different, upgraded, but it wasn't just the title on her name tag that had changed. It was her. As interim director of in-flight experience, Clara had been given a challenge: overhaul the airline's customer service program, especially in first class. But Callum hadn't given her a rulebook. He gave her something harder: trust. She interviewed crew members. She flew anonymously to study behavior. She made notes during delays and listened to passengers when no one else would. Her past mistake gave her empathy. Her growth gave her credibility. Clara didn't pretend to be perfect. She was transparent with her team, even telling them about the coffee incident. But instead of shame, she turned it into a lesson. Respect is never based on appearance, status, or silence. It's based on presence. She retrained flight attendants to observe beyond the surface, to pause before judging, and to offer kindness without condition. Under her leadership, service ratings soared, employee satisfaction improved, and turnover decreased for the first time in 4 years. Clara was no longer the girl who poured coffee on a stranger. She was the woman who turned a fall into flight. And somewhere in the background, always watching, was Callum Reeve, never micromanaging, but always guiding like a quiet compass in the sky. Full circle at seat 3, one quiet afternoon, Clara was asked to join a flight personally approved by Callum, a special VIP route showcasing the airline's reimagined first-class experience. She smiled. She hadn't flown in months, but this felt symbolic. When she stepped aboard Flight 928 once more, déjà vu washed over her. Same route, same aircraft, same seat, 3A. Clara approached the row, and there he was. Callum Reeve, this time in a soft navy blazer, casually reading her training manual. The corner of his mouth lifted when he saw her. Coffee, she offered playfully. He raised an eyebrow. You sure you trust yourself? She laughed. More than ever, she poured carefully, placing the cup down with both hands. This time, no turbulence, no mistake, just mutual respect. Callum gestured to the seat across from him. Sit. I want to hear what you've built. Clara sat, pulling out a sleek black folder filled with metrics, crew feedback, and new service protocols. But Callum wasn't interested in numbers. He was watching her, her poise, her voice, her growth. You didn't just accept the promotion, he said. You transformed it. Clara nodded slowly. I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't just a mistake waiting to happen. Callum leaned back. Good, because starting next month, the board wants to drop interim from your title. Her breath caught. You mean? Yes, welcome aboard as director, permanently. Outside the window, clouds rolled by in golden light. The plane lifted into the sky once again, but this time so did Clara. She smiled, looking out past the wing, realizing how far she'd come. From a clumsy flight attendant to the woman now shaping the future of the skies, and it all started with a spill at seat 3A. The power of one flight in the end. The story didn't just belong to Clara, or even to Callum Reeve. It belonged to every underestimated person, every professional who stumbled and had to rise stronger, every moment that seemed like a failure but turned out to be the turning point. What started as an accident at 30,000 feet became a test of character, humility, and second chances. Clara didn't just learn to pour coffee better, she learned to see people, to lead with empathy, and to rise beyond the roles people tried to keep her in. And Callum, He proved that true leadership doesn't announce itself with noise it watches, it waits, and then it lifts the right people to fly higher than they ever imagined. As the plane continued to soar through the clouds, so did the story of a stewardess. And the man in seat 3A, where judgment ended, transformation began, and where coffee spilled, legacy took flight.